journey beyond imposter syndrome. This is where I invite you into a space where high achievers and spiritual leaders converge to redefine success and self-worth. By sharing transformative stories and engaging with thought leaders, this podcast serves as a roadmap for navigating the complexities of imposter syndrome. It's an intimate look into overcoming personal barriers tailored for those who value wisdom, leadership, and intuition in business and life. Join me at the Humble Warrior Podcast with Alani Bankhead. Welcome back, Humble Warriors, to the podcast. I'm your host, Alani Bankhead, and I'm really excited to continue with part 3 of our advantages and disadvantages of our different emotions. Today is going to be all about forgiveness. And guys, before you turn me off, this is a very complicated emotion, but this is actually one of the most misunderstood ones. And the material we're going to be covering today is going to be really important for you humble warriors, especially so that you can learn how to make forgiveness work for you rather than against you. And so first and foremost, as a society, we're taught that it is important that you forgive always, right? And for a humble warrior, the reality is that forgiveness can be very counterproductive. It can be a very lukewarm emotion over time, right? So forgiveness, obviously, yes, it's good to forgive. However, if you stay in forgiveness for long periods of time, you're actually going to start to find yourself resentful, kind of meh about life, just not really excited. You might actually feel like you often forgive everybody else, right? But no one or very few people do the same for you. And so before I continue, I just want to share that this is all based off of the Energy Leadership Index tool by Bruce Schneider and IPAC. So this is a tool like an Enneagram or my Myers-Briggs or a DISC assessment, except it measures your emotional output. And I love this tool because I use it with all of my clients, and they can actually look and see in the data what's happening emotionally, which actually tells me what subconscious thoughts they're having that are dictating their behaviors. It is super fun for me every time I use it. The clients will say things like, you got all of that by looking at a bar chart? And the answer is yes, right? And so forgiveness energy is actually the beginning of life-giving energy, or anabolic energy as we use in the coaching space. So catabolic energy is that life-draining energy, life-giving, anabolic energy, amazing, like all the happy places, right? So just to recap, we covered level 1 victim energy. That says that we never win. Very catabolic. It's the lowest of the low. We all know that shame and guilt live there. It's just an awful place to be long term, right? There are advantages to it because when you're tired, you can harness it and start to rest, right? Give yourself permission to ask for help, ask for what you need. Get that cup filled again so you can go back out and do the amazing work. One level up from that, so when we're tired of feeling like a victim, we go to our anger emotion. And so anger is us saying, I win and you lose. I'm not losing anymore. I'm winning. And so this is where we come in, we get shit done using control and anger as an emotion. It's a very, very powerful tool. And it's great in terms of taking the hill or getting the mission across the finish line. So short term, again, very powerful, very helpful tool. In the long term, it actually is going to not only destroy teams, but it's going to destroy your body as well, because you have all that cortisol just and adrenaline constantly dripping in your system, right? And so today, again, we're going to talk about level 3 forgiveness energy. So again, the very beginning of anabolic energy. So we've gotten out of purely catabolic energy. And this is actually the space where people take responsibility, that's the key word, for themselves and their behaviors. They stop blaming other people like you do in anger energy and in victim energy, right? It's someone else's fault. It wasn't you. You did everything possible. They're to blame, right? And so the focus in forgiveness space is actually winning through achieving your goals and meeting your agenda first. And the big difference between forgiveness energy and anger energy is that the intention of those people operating from that forgiveness energy is to have the other person win as well. So when you're being in your anger and control, you don't care about the other person's feelings or if they win. But when you're in forgiveness, you do. So the core thought here is I win and you can win too, right? So the victim energy is I never win. Anger energy is I win, you lose. Forgiveness is I win and you can win too. Now, to further delve into this topic, people who live in this space are masters of rationalizing. So you are coping, you are releasing, forgiving, tolerating, compromising. You're explaining away all the resentment, stress, disappointments, right? Any of the burdens that you're having that are keeping you from encouraging cooperation and getting things done. You are using forgiveness energy to release those so that you can create sort of a win for the other person as well. Oftentimes, we talk about people who live in this space live in the I'm fine or it is what it is. So if you find yourself saying those phrases a lot, right? I'm fine. It's totally fine. Guys, is it really fine? No, of course it's not. It's not really fine. It is what it is, right? It doesn't sound really happy, but it doesn't sound terrible. And so if you're living here, you actually find yourself making a lot of excuses for other people's bad behavior so you can release the anger. So, as we talk about the emotional scale and we keep going up it, when you progress up to the next level, it's you making a subconscious decision that I don't want to live in that lower level anymore. I want to go to that higher level. So when you're tired of being angry because your body's uncomfortable, it's going to find a way to release that anger, and that's where the forgiveness and rationalization comes in. If you guys know that meme, it's a really famous meme of a cartoon dog sitting in like a restaurant and everything's on fire and he's smiling and he says, I'm fine. Everything's fine. Is everything fine? No. And so oftentimes people who also live in the space might feel very unfulfilled or disappointed with how their life turned out, right? They're really big keepers of the peace. So the win for them is they're not completely imploding their lives because they're not holding people accountable. But at the same time, they just want to rationalize and make everything better for everybody. So the key behavior here is cooperation, right? If I forgive and if I rationalize, I can get people to cooperate and kind of work together and we can sort of create like some cobbled together win. And, if you want to talk about level 3 or forgiveness energy in relationships, oftentimes people who live in the space are trying to fix their partner rather than trying to grow together with their partner. So when you're trying to grow together with your partner, your core thought is a win-win. So I want to win, but I want my partner to win too. That's level 5. That's peace energy. We're going to cover that in 2 episodes. So stay tuned for that. But in this case, you think there's something wrong with your partner. You want to be helpful. You want to fix them, right? You're not really overly concerned with what they're actually thinking. You just see something wrong and you want to fix it. So I'm sure you can feel the energetic difference between you're trying to fix your partner rather than trying to grow together. And so to distill the advantages, basically, nobody gets in the way of what you want. You can avoid and release the negativity, which is one of the biggest bonuses of forgiveness energy is you allow yourself to stop being angry and you're really good at engaging people, right? Because you're focused on creating cooperation. And so you're just really amazing at interfacing and figuring out what do people need for a sort of win, right? The disadvantages include you could be manipulative, right? So promises that you give aren't necessarily given from the heart, but actually more from a headspace. So you're being more intellectual because you're trying to maneuver the situation to get what you want. And when you operate primarily in forgiveness, you're kind of perpetually off the hook because if things don't work out for you, you can say, I did my best, even though deep down you know you didn't. It was kind of a cop out. So, some examples of this. So, the disadvantage, let's talk about examples. So, allowing bad behavior to happen over and over again. So, I'm sure you've probably heard something that goes to the effect of, if you do the right thing and you work your butt off, good things are going to come to you. I heard this too growing up and I lived by it. I was just like so focused on, hey, if I do the right thing and I work my ass off, like amazing things are going to come. Except what I thought were amazing things never quite came, right? And honestly, this is great advice for a regular Joe, but not a humble warrior. And the reason why is because you, unlike the majority of people, go all in. You love to support, you love to be of service. Inherently, you love to create win-wins. But the reality is that we all know the world is increasingly becoming more of a take space, right? And so people who give naturally are going to find people who take, right? And so for you, humble warrior, I want you to start considering deprogramming yourself of this because it's only going to lead to resentment, right? And if you are resonating with this, then you know you're already there, and that's usually your indicator that you should start this process. So I'm going to give you an example of how this showed up in my life, one of the many times, but you guys know that I was active duty for 12 years. And when I was active duty, very much, hey, I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to work my butt off. Good things are going to happen. And I found this pattern of I would be promised certain things by the assignments folks. And at the last minute, something would happen. They would renege or they'd have to shift things. And Alani always said yes. Right. I always said yes because I was like, well, this is what they need. It's the right thing to do. I'm going to work my butt off. Good things are going to come. I kept saying that to myself over and over. And that's what I said to rationalize the behavior, right? I didn't put them on the hook. I was like, things just happen. It's fine. It is what it is, right? And so finally, I got to a point where I had been promised something. I was so tired. I was so burned out, and they reneged again. And in that moment, I realized I had created this pattern by constantly saying yes and not setting boundaries for myself. I didn't know how to do that. I was never taught how to do that. And they definitely don't want you to do that when we're talking about a corporate hierarchy and structure, right? But I realized I could no longer rationalize their behaviors. Now, what else happened? I had actually run into a counterpart who was like, oh, yeah, they gave me my choice of Paris, Belize, and like some other amazing assignment. And I was just like, wait a second, what? Are you kidding me right now? And I realized that it had never been a level playing field. And I know a lot of you who've been in the military or in corporate are kind of chuckling, right? This was me many moons ago. But it really honestly hurt that the world I was raised to believe didn't really exist in the way that I thought it did. And so at this point, I decided I needed to take responsibility for my own life. And so I decided to break the pattern. I left active duty. I was no longer going to play this game. And for you, if there's something that maybe this story is resonating in terms of something happening in your life, my question to you is if you wouldn't treat someone else that way, then you shouldn't be allowing yourself to be treated that way. So for me, I had to think about the assignments process. And I understand, every once in a while things actually come up. But at the same time, there were things happening that I was like, I would never do that to somebody else. So why am I allowing them to do it to me? And was it hard to break the pattern? Absolutely, because I was breaking the cooperation I had worked so hard to build. But the reality was I had to step into the unknown because nobody was looking out for me in the same way that I was looking out for them. And so that's what led to my shift in career, which has been amazing, by the way. So if you're considering it, identify what part you've played in creating your own suffering and then break that pattern. Now, the advantage of forgiveness emotion is you get to release tension and stress, right? And so, an example for me that really showed me the power of forgiveness was actually I had worked for an employer and there was some stuff happening politically in the organization that I did not agree with. And because at the time I was working in literally like life altering organizations, the decisions that people were making potentially could hurt people. And I did not find that acceptable. So I ended up leaving the organization. And I kid you not, for 2 years, I would get on the yoga mat, I'd go to my little yoga class, right? And I would be in child's pose and I would forgive this person. And every day, like my faith says that you should be forgiving people, right? Now, I've told you in the past, I want you to be allergic of the word should, and this is true. But in my heart of hearts, I knew that this was the right thing to do for me. I was so angry inside, I wanted to release it. And so I would get on this yoga mat and I would forgive them. And guess what happened the next day? I woke up super pissed off again. It was like nothing had changed. And I remember I got super frustrated. And, I follow Christianity. If you follow something else, that's totally cool. Take the story for what it is, right? But on my end, I would go to God and I'd kind of be like, you're telling me that I should be forgiving and I'm forgiving. So why don't I feel better? Why do I wake up every morning angry again? Like, I kind of thought it was a magic trick where if I forgive, I should just immediately feel lighter and better. And then God brought to my attention, there's a Bible verse that talks about you forgive 70 times 7 times, right? That's a whole lot of times to forgive. And when I was younger, I didn't quite understand what that verse meant, but it was in this season that I finally started to see that forgiveness is not a one and done thing. It can often take hundreds of times of forgiving before you finally let go. And it took me 2 years of getting on a yoga mat and forgiving this person and waking up the next morning pissed off again, all over again. Before one day it was like I woke up and the anger was just gone. It wasn't there anymore. And I'm so thankful for that because it is not in my nature to be angry and resentful at people, right? Anger is an emotion that I use primarily to seek justice. It's a very black and white emotion. You can check out that episode. We'll link it in the show notes. But I am so thankful I did that work, even though that person didn't deserve my forgiveness necessarily. I didn't have to give it, but it was something that I knew inherently was the best decision for me. And, you know, another example that we can use in this case is partnerships or relationships, right? So if you have a partner or friend or some other relationship that is engaging in behavior that you find acceptable, but you are rationalizing why they're not changing. So let's say not taking the trash out, right? You've asked your partner, like that's their thing. They've agreed that they're the trash person and they're not taking the trash out. And you get really frustrated and you rationalize and you're like, oh, like they're just really busy. They're really tired, right? Over time, these excuses lose their luster. And then you get resentful and frustrated. And then you come down to anger, right? Anger is the space of control. And you're like, I'm going to take the trash out. So that's you saying, I'm going to fix the situation because somebody's got to do it. So I may as well come in and fix it. And you're perpetuating the situation by allowing unacceptable behavior to continue. And so in my case, going back to the Air Force, right? I kept saying yes to the Air Force. I never set boundaries because nobody taught me how. And so I had to learn how to set those boundaries and break that cycle and take responsibility, which is the core thought around forgiveness emotion, in order to change my life and change the behaviors into something that I wanted. With the trash situation, stop taking the trash out for them. Stop making excuses for them. Have a direct conversation about what is the issue that's preventing you from taking the trash out. Don't be passive aggressive like we often tend to be, right? And just have a loving and direct communication and use I am statements, right? When you don't take out the trash, it makes me feel like you don't care about me and you don't care about living in a sanitary space. Something like that. So you're not putting blame on them, but you're taking responsibility for how you feel at the end of the day. Okay. And the one big truth actually that I've been building up to is the reality that for most of my humble warriors, if you primarily operate in this rationalization space, so humble warriors that come to me that are tired, that are burned out, are either primarily operating out of service, which we're going to cover in our next conversation, or they're operating in this rationalization forgiveness space. And the reality is, I'm going to give you the answer to the test. In order for you to start feeling better, we actually need to trigger your anger and bring you down to that angry space and give you a safe place for you to vent it so that you can release it. And then it's going to slingshot you up naturally into those win-win joy, peace situations that we know you naturally operate in. And most of you honestly feel uncomfortable at the thought of this because you've been conditioned to not trigger your anger, right? Anger is a bad emotion. Your parents said you couldn't talk back to them. Schools said the same thing, right? You had to respect your authority figures. You learned to operate this way as a child to survive. It was a survival mechanism. And we know that study after study shows that the body is designed to survive, not to thrive. And so the whole point of this series is to help give you the roadmap on how you can learn your unique path to thriving. Another big contributor to the unhealthy parts of forgiveness, the church, right? The church or religion is a really big one. They always say you must always forgive, right? Jesus forgave in the case of Christianity. And they always point to all the different Bible verses, right? Like Jesus is on the cross and he's like, Lord, forgive them for they don't know what they do, right? All that stuff. You forgive 70 times seven. I referenced that earlier. And oftentimes we say these things because we don't want to deal with the discomfort of holding other people accountable for their bad behavior. So we do the good thing and we forgive and we try to release, except the emotion doesn't really ever go away. It actually creates more resentment and frustration. And so I want to kind of unpack that a little bit because, first and foremost, I want you to know abusive situations do not count. So, if you are one of the many millions of Americans who have been abused, you have a right to assert yourself. And when we talk about the church, we know that the church is one of the biggest offenders systemically of perpetrating abuse on people, right? Like right, wrong, and different. It is what it is. We're calling a spade a spade. And oftentimes we know that in the church, they'll say, just forgive, get over it, right? Move on, kind of thing. They put the onus on the victim to forgive the perpetrator rather than making the perpetrator take accountability for what they did. And so, whatever you're feeling today in this space, if you are ready to forgive, get on your yoga mat equivalent and forgive. Do whatever you have to do. Journal, cry about it, sing about it, whatever. Go for a prayer walk, let it go, right? If you are not in a space to forgive, honey, do not forgive. Take all that anger and frustration to whoever your higher power is and have a conversation about your anger. And I've had clients that have told me, like, I'm not allowed to be angry, right? Like, but God would get mad if I showed anger. Like, he's God. I need to respect God. Yes, you need to respect God. But ultimately, when we talk about the true essence of God, God loves you. God created you. God is like a father to you. He is your ultimate father, right? And if you are a parent, you know the love you have for your child runs so deep. If your child was frustrated, would you not want your child to come to you and vent about the frustration and partner with you in coming up with a solution? Of course. Of course you would, because you are a loving parent. Now imagine that your child just stuffs all those emotions down and doesn't bring anything up. It would be heartbreaking. You would know something was off, right? Because you always know when something's off with your kid. And so I would love to encourage you to offer up that anger to God. First of all, God already knows that you're angry. You can't really hide anything from God, right? I have had many conversations with God where I've cussed at him, cussed about whatever situation. Some of you might find that sacrilegious, and that's totally okay. But I'm a very honest, transparent person. And I've had those conversations. And guess what? God still loves me. God still accepts me. In fact, I think God loves that I brought all of myself to him, because when we want relationship, we want to see the best and worst parts of the people we love, right? Because we want them to know that they're still lovable and that we're still with them despite their ugly parts. And so, if you are a survivor of abuse and you're not there yet, you rant and you rave, whether it's to God, to a therapist, to a friend, to whatever, just find a safe space where you can release that anger. And when you are ready, you can choose to forgive. It could be weeks, months, years, decades, whatever it takes for you. You do what you need. Your body knows the way to get to healing. Okay. But ultimately, humble warriors, and this is going to be a big one, I would love to encourage you to forgive yourself. Okay. We all know that you are the absolute hardest on yourself. You have exceptionally high expectations for you. And when you don't meet those perfectionist standards, right, your inner imposter demands perfection. And when you don't meet that requirement, that inner imposter is going to go nuts. It's going to tell you all the reasons why. See, here's all the proof I need that you're not worthy and you're not good enough, right? Oh my gosh, you're so fat, you're so ugly, your hair's nasty, you don't have the resume, you're not qualified, you don't have the training. That voice, whether it's sinister, whether it's just like dull and droning, either way, it's draining the life out of you. And that's a mechanism that we created to help us achieve. But I don't actually think that you were created to achieve and die. I think you were created to live life and to live it to the fullest. And so forgiving yourself when you're ready is going to be one of the most powerful, most loving things that you can do for yourself. And I have to say for myself, I went through that whole journey. So it's been some years since I left my W-2 employment and went full-time in the business, but I had left that job and I gave every ounce of me, my physical wellness, like I wasn't eating well, I was drinking too much, I wasn't sleeping, I had all kinds of PTSD and all kinds of untreated stuff, right? I wasn't connecting with people. It was all work and then go home and everything to the mission always. And this was a pattern I actually knew was unhealthy, but I just fell back into it, right? Old neural pathways. Like I was familiar with it and comfortable with it. And I remember when I quit that job, I was about 35 pounds overweight. I wasn't sleeping through the night. I mean, it was just really, really awful. And I remember I knew inherently I had to ask my body for forgiveness because I had abused it so much. And the reality is that my body is the only physical vessel that's been with me my entire life. So whether it wanted to go or not, if my brain told it to go, it was going. And it did. And it supported me and it made the miraculous happen. And it sustained me in all the hardest times during deployments, when we were getting bombed at, when we were getting shot at, like the crazy trauma of looking at certain pieces of evidence in cases, whatever it might be. My body was always there for me, and I treated it like garbage for a good chunk of the time. And so I had to stop and look in the mirror. And guys, it was so uncomfortable the first time I looked at myself in the mirror in my own eyes. I'd never done that before. And I had to look in the mirror and say I was sorry to myself for not loving myself the way that I deserved. And once I got past the discomfort of that, I decided I needed to find one thing about myself I liked, right? Because I'm looking in the mirror and all I see is fat, cellulite, like my skin isn't doing so well from all the stress. Like it was just not a pretty situation. I'm being very judgmental of my old self, but this is how I was, right? And I had to find something about myself that I liked. And I knew that thing, it had to be true. Like I couldn't just pay lip service to like, oh, I like my eyes, right? Whatever. It had to be something that I legitimately saw in myself that I liked. And I looked for probably about 10 minutes in that mirror at all the different things. And I was like, nope, stomach is too chunky, cellulite on the legs, my feet need a pedicure, my hair is a hot mess, right? Whatever it might be. And I finally settled on my shoulders. I was like, oh, my shoulders actually are really pretty. Like, I feel like this is definitely something I can build on. And I did. And over time, I would do this practice of going and asking myself for forgiveness and finding a different part of myself that I thought was pretty or made me feel good or was strong, right? I remember thinking my biceps are really strong. My quads are super strong. And the more I thanked myself and forgave myself, the more love I was able to cultivate for myself. And now it doesn't really matter what weight I'm at, right? I was able to get a lot better in terms of my wellness. I started eating better because when I literally am able to find parts of me that I love and I can forgive myself for not treating myself very kindly, the more healing happens. And so, for you, humble warrior, what part of yourself do you need to forgive yourself for? It's so easy to blame yourself, especially if you're an abuse survivor. It is so easy to blame yourself. It's easy to see, right? We talked about forgiveness being the space where you take responsibility for your part. Oftentimes, victims think it was my fault because I enjoyed part of my victimization, right? Or maybe I flirted with that individual, so I'm responsible for creating this. Or maybe they told you it was actually your fault. My friend, this is all a lie, and you deserve to let go of that blame. And the only person who can do that for you is you. God loves you. God has already forgiven whatever stuff that you've done and that you will do. all God sees is the perfect, amazing human that you are. And I want you to know, as a human, as a seasoned investigator who deals with victims all the time, the number of victims that I have in my interview room who just break down because they feel like they created that situation. I'm so proud of you for wanting to see the part that you played, but at the same time, people are very manipulative and nobody deserves to be abused. So absolving yourself of that part does not absolve the other person of what they did. That's a whole separate forgiveness practice that we already talked about. But we have to start with you. That is the beginning of everything. And so, humble warriors, if the ELI is a tool that you would like to use, hit me up. It is $4.99 for the ELI itself, plus a 90-minute debriefing. If you want to do a coaching package, it gets rolled in as part of the package at no extra cost to you. I love this tool. It is so powerful in helping people uncover those subconscious thoughts. But ultimately, humble warrior, I hope this has been helpful today. I love you. I'm so proud of you. I'm looking forward to next time we're going to talk about compassion energy, right? So this is where the bulk of you live, is to be of service to others. And that is a beautiful, powerful thing. It can also be very draining and there's all kinds of downsides to it. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more next time. Until then, humble warriors, please remember the world needs who you were made to be. Thank you for joining me on this journey to discover how you can make your inner imposter work for you. If you enjoyed this episode and would like some help overcoming your imposter syndrome, check out the free life purpose exercise on my website and subscribe to my blog. If you already know what your life purpose is and are ready to crush or harness your imposter syndrome, then you're going to love my best-selling book, The Least of Us: How Your Weakness Points to Your Greatest Power, available on Amazon and all major book retailers. Or you can hit me up at alani@mightysparrowcoaching.com to discuss private coaching or corporate and government training. That's ALANI@mightysparrowcoaching.com. Listen, there's only ever been one you, and there will only ever be one you. And you have a specific gift to give that the world desperately needs. Don't let your self-doubt be the thing preventing you from living your most joyful and impactful life. Until next time, I'm always cheering you on.